Trumpeter make all three versions of the F-35 in 1 in 32nd scale. The F-35A variant, which is the one that's used by the US Air Force and militaries around the world. The F-35b variant, which is the US Marine Corps version, is also used by the British Royal Navy and Royal Air Force. And then the F-35C version, which is the naval variant and is used by the United States Navy and United States Marine Corps. But what do they like to build? Let's take a look at them. Welcome back to the studio, everyone. Thank you for joining me. If you saw my video last week, you'll know that I was making a F35b in 1 in 32nd scale for Trumpeter. Now this one is actually going to a serving member of the Marines, so I had to do some custom markings on it to fit with his squadron. But what's the build like overall? Well, as you'll have seen from that intro, this isn't my first rodeo on this kit. I think this is actually my third one of these. Of all of the Trumpeter F35 variants, I think this is the hardest one to get right. If you're perhaps just starting out in model making, I would say that the C is perhaps the easiest one to go for. It's the one where there's the least possibility of making mistakes. The entire upper fuselage, including the join with the wings, is all molded as a single part. Yes, the wing, folding wings can be set in an open or closed position, but overall, it takes away a potentially difficult seam if you make that one. This one has the seam, but the thing that makes this one more challenging to build is the lift fan construction and the way in which Trumpeter have implemented that. Now, the detail on that is absolutely superb. If you wanted to, you could cut away whole sections of this model and expose the interior. It's all there. It's fully detailed. It really is quite superb. It's such a lot of kit for the money, and I know this has a fairly big price tag on it, being around $200, somewhere around that mark. But the effort that has gone into the design and the detail on this is simply superb. But back to why it's a little bit more difficult to assemble than the other ones. It essentially comes as three separate parts. There's the rear fuselage where the engine is situated. Then there's the central section where the lift fan is located. Now the lift fan is held onto the engine by a drive shaft. So it's kind of exactly like the real thing. But it can be very fiddly to get that bit to assemble. It has to go through the intakes, into the front of the actual engine, connecting into the lift fan, and then the nose section then joins onto the front of the lift fan. So you've got three sections that you're joining together. Now Trumpeter have picked really intelligent places to put the joins. I cannot fault them. They join along the edge of the intakes. So there really isn't a join to see, because on the real thing there's a join in that area anyway. But it can be fiddly, and the way in which they've got it to join, the pins that hold the lift fan in position really aren't up to the job. They broke off on mine. I had to locate it by hand, and it adds an extra challenge because if it doesn't all line up, you can end up with a big gap. For an experienced modeler, really doesn't present too much of a problem, but for the novice, you could end up with something that's a mess. So if you're starting out, or if you're in the early stages of modeling, or if you haven't built something 1 in 32nd scale before, C is a much better choice, much easier to build. So think about some of the other areas of this model. The detailing in the cockpit, really, really good. It takes a decal-based approach, but the decals are nice and thin, and they suck down onto the actual underlying structure in the control panels and create a really nice effect. Obviously, it's an all-glass cockpit, so the fact that it's a decal doesn't really matter. It's a nice matte decal as well, so it really does genuinely look like the screen. Ejector seat detail, really, really good. The ejector seat comes in, I think, about 12 different parts, but they assemble really well. They fit together really well. Really, really nice. The F-35 has three options that it can fly in, and every time I post it in what's called beast mode, people on Instagram complain about it isn't like that, it's a stealth aircraft. Well, it is a stealth aircraft, but the mission of the F-35 is meant to be that it can fly to the theatre by itself, ferry mode, so it can have external tanks to give it the range that it needs to reach the theatre. Then in the early stages of the war, it can be full stealth mode. Internal weapons bays, no external pylons, and that's the way that I've depicted it here. The weapons bays were closed at the request of the client, but the external pylons have been left off. Now in the later stages of the war, once air superiority has been gained, the stealth becomes much less important, and then it can transfer into what's called beast mode, with underwing pylons carrying missiles and bombs as required for the mission. Now, my previous one I made with the beast mode. This one was made in the stealth mode. If you make it in beast mode and you leave the weapon bays open, the detailing in this one is simply superb. Weapons bays fully detailed inside. Really, really beautiful detail. Now, if you've made the Tamiya 1 in 32nd scale version of the F-35 in any of the variants and left the bays open, you'll know what the quality of that detail is like. How does this compare? Probably not quite as good, in all honesty. And at 1 in 48 scale, you might expect a little bit more. But the thing to remember in that is that if this were a Tamiya kit instead and they'd fully detailed it for the 1 in 32nd scale, you'd probably be looking at a price ticker of maybe around $350, somewhere around there. If you really like that level of detail, it presents a wonderful canvas for the scratch builder to add the extra detail that Tamiya included that Trumpeter didn't. So, it's a kind of mixed thing. If you aren't the big scratch builder, maybe you don't care so much about the detail in that area anyway. It's underneath, you're not going to see it on the shelf. I mean, that's kind of the philosophy I take about this stuff, so that I can make more things. So, decals, I made a lot of my own. It's worth being careful though with the decals that come with the kit, because they are quite fragile. They're very, very thin. The color register, however, is excellent. They do go on, they are opaque when they're on the surface, but they're very, very thin. So they do have a tendency to crunch up a little bit if you're not careful, fold back on themselves. So just take care. But they do come off the backing sheet really, really well. I found that if I soaked them for, maybe about 15 seconds, they were ready to apply to the model within about 30 seconds. And that's really good. Sometimes Trumpeter decals can take a long time to come off the backing sheet and go onto the model. Rubber tires, mixed things. Some people love them, some people loathe them. I like them. I think they're pretty good. Undercarriage construction, really, really good. Absolutely solid. No concerns about this model staying up on its feet. Clarity of the clear parts, excellent. Really, really superb. Very impressed with it. Fit around the canopy area. On this one, actually, isn't so great. The clear part of the canopy is very, very fractionally too big. Now you can force it into place, but it's a little bit nerve-wracking because you're putting quite a lot of pressure on something that's very fragile. You could probably take off a 1/16 of an inch at most, not even that probably, under half a millimeter of material just off the back, and then it would fit comfortably into place. But to be taking a sanding stick or a Dremel or something like that to a clear part takes more than I have. But I was able to fit it in just fine, just a little bit of fiddling. I want to talk a bit about the tail planes as well. The way in which Trumpeter have got these to attach is nothing short of brilliant. Sometimes the tail planes can be a bit wobbly, particularly with some Trumpeter things. These things, they clip together like Lego. During the construction phase of the model, because I wanted to be able to paint the fins sitting flat in front of me, I just slotted them into place, and they held in place throughout the construction during the overall paint without an issue. I was able to turn it upside down without them falling out. The benefit that brought to me, of course, was that I was able to paint it together but not paint that interface, so not remove that superb fit by putting a layer of paint around it. Really, really good. Now, I can say that I have thoroughly enjoyed making the entire Trumpeter 1 in 32nd scale F35 range. I think I've probably made about more than half a dozen of these so far, of the various variants, and Each of them is a pleasure, and they're very consistent. The quality of the plastic is the same on all of them. There's no warping, there's no bending, there's no short shots. Really, really good. I would happily build another one tomorrow. I think I'd rather build the C. This one's a little bit more fiddly, but it's so much fun. So if you're looking for a large-scale version of the F35 that's going to be a good, fun build, that's going to go together well, that if you take the time to make the effort to make sure that everything fits together, fits like an absolute dream, this is probably the kit for you. Out of a rating between 1 trumpet, which is unbuildable, 5 trumpets, which is nothing short of brilliant, I am going to give this one 4.5 trumpets. Absolutely superb. If you're a potential client looking to commission one, yes please, DM me, I will make one for you tomorrow. Anyway, thank you so much for spending the time to join me today, and have a great day. Bye.